Most people think discipline is about forcing yourself to do things you hate. They believe it's about gritting your teeth, pushing through pain, and relying on willpower to drag yourself toward your goals. But what if I told you that everything you've been taught about discipline is completely wrong? What if discipline isn't about forcing yourself at all? What if the most disciplined people in the world, the elite athletes, the billionaire entrepreneurs, the master craftsmen don't actually rely on willpower? What if they've discovered something that most people never learn? How to trick their brain into craving the very things that lead to success. The truth is, your brain can be rewired. It can be programmed to love discipline instead of resist it. And once you understand how to do this, everything changes. You stop fighting yourself and start working with your natural psychology. You stop relying on motivation and start building systems that make discipline feel effortless. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly how to reprogram your brain's reward system, how to make hard work feel like play, and how to build such powerful mental associations that discipline becomes as automatic as breathing. You'll learn the neuroscience secrets that elite performers use to make their toughest challenges feel like their greatest pleasures. This isn't about more willpower. This is about less willpower. This is about making your brain work for you instead of against you. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Willpower Myth. Why force never works. Here's the brutal truth that no one wants to admit. Willpower is finite, unreliable, and completely overrated. Every single day, millions of people try to change their lives through pure force of will. And every single day, they fail. They set alarms to wake up early and hit snooze. They promise themselves they'll eat healthy and order takeout by dinner. They swear they'll stick to their workout routine and quit after a week. And then they blame themselves. They think they're weak. They think they lack character. They think they're broken. But the real problem isn't them. It's that they're using the wrong strategy entirely. Science has proven beyond any doubt that willpower operates like a muscle. It gets fatigued with use. Every decision you make, every temptation you resist, every moment you force yourself to do something you don't want to do drains your willpower reserves. And once those reserves are depleted, you're running on empty. Think about it this way. If you spend your entire morning forcing yourself through tasks you hate, what mental energy do you have left for the gym after work? If you resist junk food all day through sheer determination, how strong is your resolve going to be when you're tired and stressed at night? The answer is not very strong at all. This is why most people's discipline completely falls apart by evening. This is why weekend habits are so different from weekday habits. This is why people can be incredibly disciplined in one area of their life and completely undisciplined in another. They're relying on a limited resource and that resource runs out. But here's what the most successful people understand. They don't rely on willpower at all. Instead, they've learned to hack their brain's natural reward system. They've discovered how to make their brain crave the actions that lead to success. They've turned discipline from an uphill battle into a downhill slide. Your brain is constantly seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. This is hardwired into your neural circuitry. You can't fight it and you can't change it, but you can use it. Instead of trying to force yourself to do things your brain hates, you can train your brain to love the things that are good for you. This happens through a process called conditioning. Every time you do something, your brain creates associations. If you consistently pair an action with pleasure, your brain begins to crave that action. If you consistently pair an action with pain or boredom, your brain begins to resist it. Most people accidentally condition themselves to hate discipline. They associate working out with suffering, eating healthy with deprivation, and working hard with misery. No wonder they can't stick to anything. Their own brain is working against them. But when you understand how conditioning works, you can flip the script entirely. You can condition yourself to love the gym by focusing on how amazing you feel afterward. You can condition yourself to love healthy food by paying attention to the energy it gives you. You can condition yourself to love hard work by celebrating every small win along the way. The key is understanding that your brain doesn't distinguish between what's objectively good or bad for you. It only cares about what feels rewarding in the moment. And feelings of reward can be cultivated, trained, and programmed. Once you learn how to do this, discipline stops being about force and becomes about attraction. This is why some people seem to effortlessly maintain habits that others struggle with. It's not because they have more willpower. It's because they've accidentally or intentionally conditioned themselves to enjoy those habits. Their brain has learned to associate disciplined actions with positive feelings. So, discipline feels natural and easy. The moment you stop trying to force yourself and start training yourself, everything changes. You stop fighting your own psychology and start working with it. You stop depleting your willpower and start building momentum. You stop relying on motivation and start creating automation. Chapter 2. The Neuroscience of Habit Formation. How your brain really works. To trick your brain into liking discipline, you first need to understand how your brain actually works. And the truth is, your brain is far more programmable than you realize. It's constantly changing, constantly adapting, constantly rewiring itself based on your experiences. This is called neuroplasticity, and it's the reason why you can literally reshape your mind. Every habit you have exists as a neural pathway in your brain. Think of these pathways like roads. The more you travel down a particular road, the wider and smoother it becomes. The less you use a road, the more overgrown and difficult it becomes to navigate. Your brain naturally wants to take the easiest, most familiar route, which is why habits feel automatic once they're established. But here's the crucial part. Your brain can't tell the difference between good habits and bad habits. It doesn't care whether the neural pathway leads to the gym or to the couch. It doesn't care whether the automatic response is reaching for an apple or reaching for cookies. Your brain simply strengthens whatever pathways get used most frequently. This is incredibly powerful once you understand how to use it. It means you can literally build new neural pathways for discipline and make them stronger than your old pathways of laziness and procrastination. But you have to understand the specific mechanism that drives this process. Every habit operates on what scientists call the habit loop. Cue, routine, reward. The cue triggers the behavior. The routine is the behavior itself. And the reward is what your brain gets from completing the behavior. Your brain remembers this sequence and starts to crave the reward whenever it encounters the cue. Here's where most people go wrong. They focus entirely on the routine and ignore the cue and reward. They try to force themselves to exercise without setting up proper triggers or rewards. They try to eat healthy without creating positive associations. They're essentially trying to build a habit loop with missing pieces, and then they wonder why it doesn't work. But when you understand the complete loop, you can engineer habits that feel irresistible. You can choose cues that naturally occur in your environment. You can design routines that feel manageable and achievable. And most importantly, you can create immediate rewards that make your brain crave the entire sequence. The reward is the most critical piece because it's what drives the craving. Your brain doesn't actually want the habit itself. It wants the neurochemical reward that comes from completing the habit. When you work out, your brain releases endorphins. When you complete a challenging task, your brain releases dopamine. When you learn something new, your brain releases acetylcholine. These neurochemicals feel good, really good. And your brain starts to associate the entire activity with these good feelings. Over time, just thinking about the activity begins to trigger anticipation of the reward. This is when discipline transforms from something you have to force yourself to do into something you actually want to do. But there's a catch. The reward has to be immediate and meaningful to your brain. Future rewards, no matter how significant, don't create strong enough associations to drive habit formation. Your brain is wired to value immediate gratification over delayed gratification. This is why promising yourself that you'll be healthy someday isn't enough to motivate daily exercise. The solution is to create immediate rewards for disciplined behavior. This doesn't mean eating a donut after every workout. It means paying attention to the natural rewards that are already there. The endorphin rush, the sense of accomplishment, the boost in energy, the feeling of being proud of yourself. Most people completely miss these immediate rewards because they're so focused on the difficulty of the activity. They're thinking about how hard the workout is instead of how good they feel during and after it. They're thinking about how much they want to quit instead of how strong they're becoming. But when you consciously redirect your attention to the immediate benefits, you begin to condition your brain to associate discipline with pleasure instead of pain. You're literally rewiring your neural pathways to make discipline feel good. This rewiring doesn't happen overnight, but it happens much faster than most people think. Research shows that new neural pathways can begin forming within days and significant changes can occur within weeks. The key is consistency and conscious attention to the rewards. Every time you complete a disciplined action and consciously acknowledge the immediate benefit, you're strengthening the neural pathway that associates that action with reward. Every time you do this, the next repetition becomes slightly easier. Eventually, the pathway becomes so strong that the disciplined action feels automatic and enjoyable. This is how elite performers train themselves. They don't rely on willpower to get through tough practices or challenging work sessions. They've conditioned themselves to genuinely enjoy the process. They've trained their brains to release feel-good chemicals in response to hard work. They've turned discipline into an addiction. The healthiest addiction possible. Chapter 3. The dopamine system. Programming your brain's reward center. Dopamine is the master chemical of motivation and craving. It's your brain's way of saying, "Do that again." Understanding how dopamine works is absolutely crucial to reprogramming your relationship with discipline because dopamine is what transforms effortful actions into automatic desires. Most people have a completely backwards understanding of dopamine. They think dopamine is released when you achieve something or get a reward. But that's not how it works at all. Dopamine is actually released in anticipation of a reward, not during the reward itself. It's the neurochemical that drives you toward action, not the feeling you get from completing the action. This distinction is massive and it explains why some people naturally crave challenging activities while others avoid them. It's not because they're fundamentally different people. It's because their dopamine systems have been conditioned differently. When your brain expects a reward from an activity, it releases dopamine before you even start the activity. This dopamine release creates motivation, focus, and energy. It makes you want to engage in the behavior. It makes difficult tasks feel exciting rather than burdensome. But here's the key. Your brain only releases anticipatory dopamine for activities it has learned to associate with reward. If your brain has learned that working out leads to feeling good, it will release dopamine. When you think about working out, if your brain has learned that working out leads to suffering, it will not release dopamine and you'll feel resistance instead of motivation. This is why some people genuinely love activities that others hate. Their brains have been conditioned to expect positive outcomes, so their dopamine system drives them toward those activities. They're not more disciplined, they're more conditioned. The amazing thing is that you can deliberately condition your own dopamine system. You can train your brain to release dopamine in response to disciplined behaviors. You can literally make yourself crave the things that are good for you. The process works like this. Every time you pair a behavior with a genuine reward, your brain strengthens the association between that behavior and positive outcomes. Over time, just thinking about the behavior begins to trigger dopamine release. Eventually, you develop a genuine craving for the behavior. But there are specific strategies that make this conditioning process much more effective. First, you need to focus on intrinsic rewards rather than extrinsic ones. Intrinsic rewards are the natural good feelings that come from the activity itself, the endorphin rush from exercise, the satisfaction from solving a problem, the sense of progress from learning something new. Extrinsic rewards are external rewards you give yourself, treats, purchases, entertainment. While extrinsic rewards can be helpful in the beginning, they can actually undermine intrinsic motivation if you become too dependent on them. Your brain starts to focus on the external reward instead of the activity itself. The goal is to train your brain to find the activity itself rewarding. You want your dopamine system to respond to the inherent benefits of discipline. The confidence that comes from keeping promises to yourself, the strength that comes from pushing through challenges, the clarity that comes from maintaining healthy habits. To do this effectively, you need to become a detective of your own experience. After every disciplined action, spend a moment consciously identifying what felt good about it. Maybe your body feels more energized. Maybe your mind feels clearer. Maybe you feel proud of yourself for following through. Whatever it is, acknowledge it explicitly. This conscious acknowledgement is crucial because it helps your brain make the connection between the action and the positive feeling. Without this conscious awareness, the brain might miss the connection entirely. But when you deliberately pay attention to the benefits, you're essentially teaching your brain what to expect from this behavior in the future. Another powerful strategy is anticipation training. Before you engage in a disciplined behavior, spend a moment anticipating how good you'll feel afterward. Visualize the sense of accomplishment. Imagine the energy boost. Picture yourself feeling proud and satisfied. This anticipation training serves two purposes. It helps your brain start releasing dopamine before you begin the activity, which gives you more motivation and energy for the task. And it primes your brain to notice and appreciate the rewards when they actually occur. You can also use what scientists call variable reinforcement to make your dopamine conditioning even stronger. Instead of rewarding yourself the same way every time, vary the rewards. Sometimes focus on how accomplished you feel. Sometimes focus on how your body feels. Sometimes focus on how much progress you're making. This variability keeps your dopamine system engaged and prevents habituation. Your brain stays interested and motivated because it never knows exactly what type of reward to expect, but it knows something good is coming. The most advanced strategy is called reward bundling, where you consciously stack multiple types of satisfaction from a single disciplined action. After a workout, you might simultaneously appreciate the physical feeling in your muscles, the mental satisfaction of keeping your commitment, the long-term progress toward your goals, and the immediate boost in energy and mood. When you train yourself to extract multiple layers of reward from disciplined actions, your brain develops an incredibly strong association between discipline and satisfaction. The anticipation of these layered rewards creates powerful motivation that makes discipline feel effortless. Chapter 4. Reframing Pain as Pleasure. The Advanced Psychology of Transformation. The most powerful shift you can make in your relationship with discipline is learning to reframe challenge as excitement rather than suffering. This isn't about lying to yourself or pretending that difficult things are easy. It's about understanding that your interpretation of physical and mental discomfort completely determines how you experience it. Consider this. The exact same physiological sensations that one person experiences as anxiety, another person experiences as excitement. The racing heart, the heightened alertness, the surge of energy. These can be interpreted as either panic or anticipation. The difference isn't in the sensations themselves, but in the meaning your brain assigns to them. The same principle applies to the discomfort that comes with disciplined action. The muscle fatigue from exercise, the mental strain of focused work, the emotional challenge of leaving your comfort zone. All of these can be experienced as either suffering to endure or intensity to enjoy. Elite performers in every field have mastered this reframe. They've trained themselves to interpret challenge as opportunity, difficulty as growth, and discomfort as aliveness. They don't experience less discomfort than everyone else. They've just learned to find meaning and even pleasure in that discomfort. This transformation happens through a process called cognitive reappraisal. Instead of automatically labeling challenging experiences as negative, you consciously choose to interpret them through a different lens. You train yourself to see effort as evidence of growth, resistance as a sign you're pushing boundaries, and discomfort as proof you're becoming stronger. The key is understanding that growth only happens at the edge of your comfort zone. Every time you feel challenged, every time something feels difficult, that's your body and mind adapting to new demands. That discomfort is literally the feeling of yourself becoming more capable. Once you understand this, everything changes. That burning sensation in your muscles during exercise isn't suffering. It's your body building strength. The mental strain of staying focused on difficult work isn't torture. It's your mind developing greater capacity. The emotional discomfort of doing something scary isn't weakness. It's your character expanding. But this reframe only works if you make it consciously and consistently. Your brain's default programming is to avoid discomfort and seek ease. You have to actively train yourself to find meaning and value in challenging experiences. One of the most effective ways to do this is through narrative reframing. Instead of telling yourself, "This is hard and I don't want to do it," you tell yourself, "This is exactly what I need to become the person I want to be." Instead of "This hurts," you think "This is working." Instead of "I can't wait for this to be over," you think "I'm grateful for this opportunity to grow." These aren't just positive thinking tricks. They're powerful psychological tools that literally change how your brain processes challenging experiences. When you consistently frame difficulty as valuable rather than problematic, your brain starts to associate challenging situations with positive outcomes. Another crucial element is learning to find what psychologists call flow states within challenging activities. Flow is the psychological state where you become completely absorbed in what you're doing, where the activity itself becomes intrinsically rewarding. Most people think flow only happens during naturally enjoyable activities. But it can actually be cultivated in any activity that provides the right balance of challenge and skill. To find flow in disciplined activities, you need to adjust the challenge level to match your current ability. If the activity is too easy, you'll be bored. If it's too difficult, you'll be overwhelmed. But when the challenge is just slightly beyond your current comfort zone, you enter a state where the activity becomes engaging and absorbing. You can also cultivate flow by setting clear immediate goals within the larger activity. Instead of "just go to the gym," you might focus on "increase my squat weight by 5 pounds or maintain perfect form for every representative." These micro goals create clear feedback loops that keep your mind engaged and motivated. The most advanced practitioners learn to find aesthetic appreciation in challenging activities. They develop an appreciation for the elegance of efficient movement, the beauty of sustained effort, the artistry of pushing through resistance. They turn discipline into a form of expression rather than just endurance. This might sound abstract, but it's incredibly practical when you start to appreciate the craft involved in disciplined action. Nay, the precision required for good form, the mental clarity needed for focused work, the courage required to push through resistance. The activities become fascinating rather than just difficult. You can accelerate this transformation by studying people who genuinely love challenging activities. Watch interviews with elite athletes. Read about successful entrepreneurs. Observe master craftsmen at work. Notice how they talk about difficulty and challenge. Notice how they frame struggle and effort. Notice how they find meaning and purpose in what most people would consider suffering. The goal isn't to become someone who enjoys every moment of every challenging activity. Even the most disciplined people have moments where they don't feel like doing what they need to do. The goal is to develop a deep appreciation for the growth that comes from pushing through resistance and to find genuine satisfaction in the process of becoming stronger, more capable, and more resilient. When you achieve this reframe, discipline stops being something you do despite how it feels and becomes something you do because of how it feels. The challenge itself becomes the reward. Chapter 5. Identity-based discipline. Becoming someone who naturally chooses hard things. The most profound transformation happens when you stop trying to act disciplined and start becoming a disciplined person. This isn't just semantics. It's a fundamental shift in how you see yourself. And that shift changes everything about how you approach challenging situations. Most people approach discipline from the outside in. They try to change their behavior while keeping their identity the same. They force themselves to go to the gym while still thinking of themselves as someone who hates exercise. They make themselves eat healthy while still identifying as someone with no willpower around food. They push themselves to work harder while still seeing themselves as naturally lazy. This approach is exhausting and unsustainable. Because you're constantly fighting against your own self-concept. Every disciplined action feels like you're acting against your nature. Every moment of resistance feels like proof that you're not really capable of change. You're trying to maintain behaviors that contradict who you believe you are. But when you flip this approach and start with identity, everything becomes easier and more sustainable. Instead of trying to act like a disciplined person, you focus on becoming a disciplined person. Instead of forcing yourself to do things that feel foreign, you choose actions that align with who you're becoming. This works because behavior naturally flows from identity. People act in ways that are consistent with how they see themselves. If you see yourself as someone who values health, you naturally make healthy choices. If you see yourself as someone who follows through on commitments, you naturally honor your promises to yourself. If you see yourself as someone who embraces challenge, you naturally seek out opportunities to grow. The key is understanding that identity isn't fixed. It's constantly being shaped by your actions. Every action you take is essentially a vote for the kind of person you want to be. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, you're voting for I am someone who does hard things. Every time you choose immediate gratification over long-term goals, you're voting for I am someone who takes the easy path. Your brain keeps track of these votes, and over time the pattern of votes becomes your identity. This is why small actions are so powerful. They're not just creating immediate results. They're literally shaping who you become. But you can accelerate this process by being intentional about the identity you're building. Instead of just randomly taking disciplined actions, you can consciously choose actions that reinforce the specific identity you want to develop. Start by getting clear about who you want to become. Don't focus on what you want to achieve. Focus on the type of person who would naturally achieve those things. If you want to be in great shape, think about the identity of someone who values health and enjoys physical challenge. If you want to be successful in business, think about the identity of someone who embraces hard work and continuous learning. Once you're clear about the identity you want to build, every choice becomes an opportunity to reinforce that identity. When you're deciding whether to work out, you don't ask, "Do I feel like working out?" You ask, "What would someone who values health and physical challenge do right now?" When you're deciding whether to tackle a difficult project, you don't ask, "Is this going to be easy?" You ask, "What would someone who embraces growth and hard work do in this situation?" This shift in questioning completely changes your decision-making process. Instead of fighting against resistance, you're simply acting in alignment with your values and identity. Instead of forcing yourself to do things you don't want to do, you're choosing to do things that express who you're becoming. But here's the crucial part. You have to start small and build evidence gradually. You can't just decide you're a disciplined person and expect your brain to believe it immediately. You have to prove it to yourself through consistent small actions that align with your desired identity. Every time you keep a small promise to yourself, you're building evidence that you're someone who follows through. Every time you choose short-term discomfort for long-term benefit, you're building evidence that you're someone who values growth over comfort. Every time you do something challenging when you don't feel like it, you're building evidence that you're someone who doesn't let feelings dictate actions. This evidence accumulates over time and gradually shifts your self-concept. You start to genuinely see yourself as someone who naturally chooses hard things, someone who values growth, someone who follows through on commitments. And once that identity shift happens, disciplined choices stop feeling forced and start feeling natural. You can accelerate this process through what psychologists call identity rehearsal. Throughout the day, consciously think of yourself as the person you're becoming. When you're facing a choice between comfort and growth, remind yourself, I'm someone who chooses growth. Remind yourself, I'm someone who follows through. When you're deciding how to spend your time, ask yourself, what would someone with my values choose to do right now? This isn't fake it till you make it. This is consciously choosing to embody the identity you're building through your actions. You're not pretending to be someone you're not. You're practicing being someone you're becoming. The most powerful version of this practice is what I call identity anchoring. Choose a specific phrase that captures the identity you're building. I am someone who does hard things. I am someone who chooses growth over comfort. I am someone who keeps promises to myself. Repeat this phrase to yourself regularly, especially when you're facing challenging decisions. This phrase becomes an anchor that helps you make choices aligned with your desired identity rather than your current feelings or impulses. It reminds you of who you're becoming and helps you act from that future identity rather than your past conditioning. Over time, this identity-based approach to discipline becomes incredibly powerful because it aligns your actions with your deepest sense of self. You're no longer fighting against your nature. You're expressing your nature. Discipline becomes a form of self-expression rather than self-force. Chapter 6. Environmental Design. Setting up your world for automatic discipline. Your environment is constantly programming your behavior. And most people have accidentally designed their surroundings to make discipline as difficult as possible. They keep junk food in easy reach while hiding their gym clothes. They place their phone next to their bed while putting their books across the room. They surround themselves with comfort and convenience. Then wonder why they can't stick to challenging goals. But when you understand how environmental cues work, you can flip this dynamic entirely. You can design your physical and digital environment to make disciplined choices feel obvious and effortless while making undisciplined choices feel inconvenient and unnatural. Environmental cues work because your brain is constantly scanning for signals about what to do next. These cues trigger automatic responses that bypass your conscious decision-making process entirely. When you see your running shoes by the door, your brain automatically starts preparing for exercise. When you see your phone on the nightstand, your brain automatically reaches for distraction. The key is understanding that every object in your environment is either cueing disciplined behavior or undisciplined behavior. There's no neutral space. Your surroundings are constantly influencing your choices, usually below the level of conscious awareness. Most people try to overcome bad environmental cues through willpower. But this is backwards and exhausting. Instead of fighting against your environment, you should redesign it to support your goals. Make good choices obvious and bad choices hidden or inconvenient. For physical discipline, like exercise, this means placing your workout clothes where you can't miss them and putting barriers between yourself and excuses. Lay out your gym clothes the night before. Put your running shoes by the front door. Set up your home workout space so it's ready to go at any moment. Remove or hide anything that might tempt you toward laziness. For mental discipline, like focused work, this means creating an environment that signals deep concentration while removing anything that signals distraction. Designate a specific space for important work and keep it completely clear of anything unrelated to that work. Remove your phone from this space entirely. Use website blockers during work hours. Create physical barriers between yourself and easy entertainment. For nutritional discipline, this means making healthy choices the default and unhealthy choices require extra effort. Keep fruits and vegetables at eye level in your refrigerator while hiding less healthy options. Pre-portion healthy snacks and make them easily accessible. Remove junk food from your home entirely or at least make it require significant effort to access. But environmental design goes beyond just physical objects. You also need to consider your digital environment, which has become one of the most powerful influences on modern behavior. Your phone, computer, and other devices are constantly sending cues that either support or undermine your disciplined goals. Design your digital environment just as intentionally as your physical space. Organize your phone so that productive apps are easily accessible while time-wasting apps require extra steps to reach. Use app timers and restrictions to automatically limit access to distracting content. Create different user profiles or environments for different types of activities. Set up your computer desktop to cue focused work rather than distraction. Remove shortcuts to entertainment sites and social media. Use website blockers during work hours. Create desktop backgrounds and screensavers that remind you of your goals and values. Your social environment is equally important and perhaps even more powerful than your physical environment. The people you spend time with are constantly influencing your behavior through their own choices and expectations. If you surround yourself with people who value comfort over growth, you'll naturally drift toward comfort. If you surround yourself with people who embrace challenge and discipline, you'll naturally raise your own standards. This doesn't mean you need to abandon friends who don't share your goals. But it does mean you should be intentional about creating social environments that support your growth. Seek out communities of people who are working towards similar objectives. Join groups focused on the specific areas where you want to develop more discipline. Find accountability partners who will support your goals rather than enable your excuses. Share your commitments with people who will celebrate your progress and gently challenge you when you're falling short. Create social pressure that works in your favor rather than against you. You can also use what psychologists call implementation intentions to bridge the gap between environmental cues and desired behaviors. These are specific if-then plans that predecide how you'll respond to particular situations. Instead of relying on in-the-moment decision-making, you create automatic responses to common scenarios. For example, if I see my workout clothes, then I will immediately put them on and head to the gym. If I sit down at my desk, then I will immediately open my most important project. If I open the refrigerator, then I will first reach for water or healthy food. These pre-made decisions reduce the mental energy required for discipline and make good choices feel automatic. The most powerful environmental design strategy is what I call friction engineering. You systematically increase friction for behaviors you want to avoid while decreasing friction for behaviors you want to embrace. Every extra step, every small barrier, every moment of inconvenience either supports or undermines your goals. Want to eat less junk food? Store it in hard-to-reach places that require effort to access. Want to exercise more? Remove every possible barrier to starting your workout. Want to focus better? Make distraction require multiple steps while making concentrated work require only one click. Remember that small changes in friction can create massive changes in behavior over time. Adding just 20 seconds of inconvenience can dramatically reduce how often you engage in a behavior. Removing 20 seconds of friction can significantly increase how often you choose disciplined actions. Chapter 7. The Momentum System. How small wins create unstoppable discipline. Momentum is the secret weapon that transforms sporadic discipline into sustained excellence. Most people think discipline requires constant effort and willpower. But the truth is that discipline becomes easier and more automatic the longer you practice it. Each discipline choice makes the next one slightly easier. Each small win builds confidence for bigger challenges. Each day of consistency creates momentum that carries you through difficult moments. But momentum doesn't happen by accident. It has to be engineered through specific strategies that create positive feedback loops and compound motivation over time. The key is understanding how to generate early wins that build confidence and create the psychological conditions for sustained effort. The momentum system starts with what I call minimum viable disciplines. These are the smallest possible versions of the habits you want to build. Scaled down to be so easy that you can't fail. Instead of committing to hour-long workouts, you commit to putting on your gym shoes every day. Instead of promising to write 1,000 words, you promise to write one sentence. Instead of overhauling your entire diet, you promise to eat one piece of fruit each day. The goal isn't to stay at this minimal level forever. The goal is to build the neural pathways and psychological patterns that support larger commitments. You're training your brain to see you as someone who follows through on promises to yourself. You're creating evidence that you can be consistent. You're building the foundation for much bigger changes. Most people resist this approach because it feels too small and insignificant. They want to make dramatic changes immediately. But this urgency usually backfires because it creates commitments that are impossible to maintain consistently. When you inevitably fail to meet unrealistic expectations, you damage your confidence and make future attempts more difficult. The momentum system works because it prioritizes consistency over intensity. It's better to do something small every single day than something big once in a while. Consistency builds trust with yourself, which is the foundation of all sustainable discipline. When you consistently keep small promises to yourself, you develop confidence that you can keep bigger promises. Start by choosing one minimum viable discipline that aligns with your larger goals. Make it so small that you could do it even on your worst day. Make it specific enough that there's no ambiguity about whether you completed it. Make it tied to an existing habit so you don't have to remember to do it. Once you've established this minimum discipline for at least 2 weeks, you can begin to gradually expand it. But the expansion should be subtle and sustainable. If you've been putting on your gym shoes every day, maybe you start walking around the block. If you've been writing one sentence every day, maybe you expand to one paragraph. The key is expanding slowly enough that the new version still feels manageable and automatic. You want to stay within what psychologists call your zone of proximal development, the space where challenge is present, but not overwhelming. Push too hard, too fast, and you'll break the momentum you've built. Another crucial element of the momentum system is celebration. Your brain needs to recognize and appreciate each small win in order to build positive associations with disciplined behavior. Most people skip this step entirely, moving immediately from one task to the next without pausing to acknowledge their progress. But celebration is what signals to your brain that the behavior was worthwhile and should be repeated. It doesn't have to be elaborate or time-consuming. Simply pausing for a moment after completing a disciplined action and consciously appreciating your follow-through is enough to strengthen the positive feedback loop. You can enhance this celebration by keeping a visible record of your consistency. This could be as simple as marking an X on a calendar each day you complete your discipline or keeping a journal where you note your daily wins. The visual evidence of your consistency becomes a source of motivation and pride that fuels continued effort. The momentum system also includes what I call keystone disciplines, NES, specific habits that naturally trigger other positive behaviors. These are actions that create ripple effects throughout your day and make other discipline choices feel more natural and automatic. Exercise is often a keystone discipline because it boosts energy, improves mood, and creates a sense of accomplishment that carries over into other areas. A morning routine can be a keystone discipline because it establishes a pattern of intentionality that influences choices throughout the day. Reading can be a keystone discipline because it puts you in a learning mindset that makes other growth-oriented activities more appealing. Identify which disciplines have the greatest ripple effect in your life and prioritize building momentum in those areas first. When you establish strong keystone disciplines, other areas of discipline often improve automatically without requiring additional willpower. The momentum system becomes incredibly powerful when you link multiple small disciplines together into what I call discipline chains. These are sequences of small disciplined actions that flow naturally from one to the next, creating sustained periods of productive behavior. For example, your morning discipline chain might include making your bed, drinking a glass of water, doing 5 minutes of stretching, and reading 1 page of a book. Each action is small enough to feel effortless, but together they create a foundation of discipline that sets the tone for your entire day. Design your discipline chains so that each action naturally leads to the next. Use the completion of one action as the cue for the beginning of the next. This creates a flow where discipline feels effortless and automatic rather than forced and difficult. The most advanced practitioners of the momentum system learn to recognize and leverage what I call discipline waves. Periods when motivation and energy are naturally high and disciplined action feels easier. Instead of assuming motivation will always be available, they surf these waves when they appear while maintaining minimum viable disciplines during lower motivation periods. When you feel a discipline wave coming, that's the time to tackle bigger challenges, start new habits, or push beyond your comfort zone. When you feel motivation ebbing, that's the time to return to your minimum viable disciplines and focus on maintaining consistency rather than intensity. Understanding and working with these natural rhythms rather than fighting against them allows you to maintain long-term momentum without burning out or becoming discouraged during inevitable low-energy periods. Chapter 8. Advanced Conditioning Techniques. Training your brain like an elite performer. Elite performers in every field have discovered advanced psychological techniques for conditioning themselves to crave challenging activities. These methods go far beyond basic habit formation and tap into sophisticated principles of behavioral psychology and neuroscience. When you understand and apply these techniques, you can literally train yourself to become addicted to discipline. The first advanced technique is called contrast conditioning, where you systematically alternate between challenging activities and immediately rewarding experiences. This creates a powerful psychological association between effort and pleasure that makes your brain start to crave the entire sequence. Here's how it works. After every challenging activity, you immediately engage in something that feels genuinely good. This doesn't mean eating junk food or watching TV. It means consciously savoring the natural high that comes from completing difficult tasks. You might take a moment to appreciate your accomplishment. Enjoy the physical sensations in your body or visualize how this effort contributes to your long-term goals. The key is making the reward immediate and genuine. Your brain needs to experience positive feelings within minutes of completing the challenging activity. In order to create strong neural associations, the more consistently you pair effort with immediate satisfaction, the more your brain begins to crave the entire sequence. Another powerful technique is called progressive exposure, where you gradually increase the intensity of challenging activities while maintaining positive associations. This allows you to build tolerance for higher levels of discomfort while keeping the experience rewarding rather than overwhelming. Start with a level of challenge that feels manageable and even somewhat enjoyable. Once you've established positive associations at this level, gradually increase the intensity. The increases should be small enough that the activity still feels rewarding, but significant enough that you're continuously expanding your comfort zone. This technique is particularly effective for physical disciplines like exercise, where you can gradually increase duration, intensity or complexity while maintaining the enjoyment of the activity. But it also works for mental disciplines like focused work, where you can gradually extend concentration periods while keeping the work engaging and rewarding. The third technique is called association stacking, where you consciously layer multiple positive associations onto a single challenging activity. Instead of focusing on just one benefit of the activity, you train yourself to simultaneously appreciate multiple rewards. For a workout, you might simultaneously appreciate the physical sensation of your muscles working, the mental satisfaction of keeping a commitment to yourself, the long-term progress toward your health goals, the immediate boost in energy and mood, and the sense of accomplishment from pushing through resistance. The more positive associations you can stack onto a single activity, the more powerfully your brain will crave that activity. Visualization conditioning is another advanced technique where you use mental rehearsal to strengthen the neural pathways associated with disciplined behavior. Before engaging in challenging activities, you spend time vividly imagining yourself successfully completing the activity and feeling great about it afterward. This mental rehearsal serves multiple purposes. It prepares your brain for success. It allows you to practice experiencing positive emotions in connection with the activity, and it strengthens the neural pathways that will be activated during the actual behavior. The more detailed and emotionally engaging your visualizations, the more effective this technique becomes. The most sophisticated technique is called state anchoring, where you consciously create psychological triggers that instantly access the mental and emotional state needed for disciplined action. This involves identifying the specific thoughts, feelings, and physical sensations that accompany your most disciplined moments, then creating simple cues that can recreate those states on demand. During moments when discipline feels effortless and enjoyable, pay close attention to everything about your internal experience. Notice your posture, your breathing, your emotional state, your thought patterns, and any physical sensations. Then create a simple physical gesture, phrase, or mental image that you can use to recall this state when discipline feels more difficult. With practice, these anchors become incredibly powerful tools for accessing your most disciplined mindset whenever you need it. Instead of waiting for motivation to strike naturally, you can consciously recreate the psychological conditions that make discipline feel effortless. Advanced practitioners also use what's called environmental conditioning, where they create specific physical environments that automatically trigger disciplined states. This goes beyond simple environmental design to create spaces that have been psychologically conditioned to enhance focus, motivation, and performance. This involves consistently using specific locations only for disciplined activities, gradually building up powerful psychological associations between those spaces and peak performance states. Over time, simply entering these environments begins to automatically shift your mindset toward discipline and focus. You can accelerate this conditioning by consciously appreciating these spaces every time you use them successfully. Appreciate the sense of clarity and purpose that comes from being in a place dedicated to your growth. The most advanced technique is called transformation tracking, where you maintain detailed awareness of how disciplined actions are changing you at physical, mental, and emotional levels. This isn't just about tracking outcomes like weight loss or productivity metrics. It's about consciously noticing and appreciating the subtle ways that discipline is transforming your entire being. Pay attention to how your confidence changes as you consistently follow through on commitments. Notice how your energy levels shift as you maintain healthy habits. Observe how your mental clarity improves as you practice focused work. Track how your emotional resilience develops as you regularly push through resistance. This conscious tracking creates powerful motivation because it helps you see discipline not just as a means to external goals but as a process of becoming a fundamentally different person. When you realize that every disciplined action is literally rewiring your brain and rebuilding your character, the activities themselves become meaningful and rewarding. The key to all these advanced techniques is consistency and conscious attention. These conditioning methods only work if you apply them systematically over time. But when you do apply them consistently, they create incredibly powerful psychological momentum that makes discipline feel natural, enjoyable, and even addictive. Chapter 9. Overcoming Resistance. What to do when your brain fights back. Even with perfect conditioning techniques and environmental design, you will still face moments when your brain actively resists disciplined action. This resistance isn't a sign that you're failing or that the techniques don't work. It's a natural part of the growth process that can actually be used to accelerate your development when you understand how to work with it properly. Resistance typically shows up in three forms. Physical resistance, where your body feels heavy and sluggish. Emotional resistance, where you feel anxious or unmotivated. And mental resistance, where your mind generates endless excuses and distractions. Each type requires specific strategies to overcome effectively. Physical resistance often manifests as fatigue, tension, or a general sense that your body doesn't want to move toward challenging activities. This happens because your nervous system is trying to conserve energy by keeping you in familiar low-effort patterns. The solution isn't to fight against this physical resistance, but to work with your body's natural rhythms and energy systems. Start by acknowledging the physical resistance without judgment. Your body isn't being lazy or stubborn. It's following its programming to conserve energy. Then use movement to shift your physical state. Sometimes just standing up and doing light movement for 60 seconds is enough to break through physical inertia and access the energy needed for more challenging activities. You can also use breathing techniques to shift your physical state rapidly. Deep rhythmic breathing activates your parasympathetic nervous system and can quickly move you from a state of resistance to a state of readiness. Spend 2 to 3 minutes focusing entirely on slow deep breathing while visualizing yourself successfully engaging in the challenging activity. Cold exposure is another powerful tool for overcoming physical resistance. A cold shower or even splashing cold water on your face can instantly shift your nervous system from a state of comfort-seeking to a state of alertness and energy. This physiological shift often carries over into other areas and makes disciplined action feel more natural. Emotional resistance typically shows up as anxiety, overwhelm, or a general feeling that you don't want to engage in challenging activities. This happens because your brain associates challenge with potential threat or discomfort. The key to overcoming emotional resistance is reframing the emotional experience rather than trying to suppress or ignore it. Instead of viewing anxiety as a signal to avoid the activity, learn to interpret it as excitement about growth. The physiological sensations of anxiety and excitement are nearly identical. The difference is in how you interpret them. When you feel your heart racing before a challenging workout or important project, consciously reframe that sensation as your body preparing for peak performance. You can also use what psychologists call the 202 rule to overcome emotional resistance. Instead of trying to commit to the entire challenging activity when you're feeling resistant, just commit to getting started for 20 seconds. Often the resistance disappears once you actually begin the activity and momentum carries you through the rest. Another effective strategy for emotional resistance is called the curiosity approach. Instead of focusing on how difficult the activity will be, approach it with genuine curiosity about what you'll discover or how you'll feel afterward. This shifts your emotional state from avoidance to interest, which naturally reduces resistance. Mental resistance is often the most sophisticated form of resistance because it disguises itself as rational thinking. Your mind generates logical-sounding reasons why you should postpone disciplined action. You're too busy. The timing isn't right. You should do more research first. You'll start tomorrow when you have more energy. The key to overcoming mental resistance is recognizing these thoughts as resistance rather than legitimate reasoning. Your brain is incredibly creative at generating excuses, and many of them will sound perfectly reasonable. But you can learn to distinguish between genuine practical considerations and resistance disguised as logic. When you notice your mind generating excuses, pause and ask yourself, is this a legitimate concern that requires immediate attention, or is this my brain trying to keep me in my comfort zone? Most of the time, you'll realize the excuse is just resistance trying to prevent growth and change. You can also use what I call the resistance redirect technique. Instead of fighting against resistant thoughts, acknowledge them and then redirect that mental energy toward the challenging activity. I notice I'm feeling resistant to working out, which means this is exactly what I need to be doing right now to grow stronger. One of the most powerful tools for overcoming all forms of resistance is developing what psychologists call metacognitive awareness. I see the ability to observe your own thoughts and reactions without being controlled by them. When you can step back and notice resistance as it arises, you gain the power to choose your response rather than being automatically controlled by the resistance. Practice observing your resistance with curiosity rather than judgment. Notice where you feel it in your body. Notice what thoughts accompany it. Notice what emotions are present. This observer perspective creates space between you and the resistance, giving you room to choose disciplined action despite the resistance. Advanced practitioners learn to use resistance as fuel for discipline. They recognize that the presence of resistance indicates they're approaching something important for their growth. Instead of seeing resistance as an obstacle, they see it as confirmation that they're moving in the right direction. The strongest resistance often appears just before the biggest breakthroughs. When you're developing a new level of discipline, your brain will generate intense resistance as it tries to pull you back to familiar patterns. Learning to push through this resistance is what separates people who achieve lasting transformation from those who stay stuck in cycles of starting and stopping. You can also use pre-commitment strategies to bypass resistance entirely. These involve making decisions about challenging activities when you're in a positive, motivated state, then creating systems that make it difficult to back out when resistance arises later. This might involve scheduling workouts with other people, putting money on the line for your commitments, or creating public accountability that makes it socially difficult to give up when you feel resistant. The key is designing these commitments when you're feeling motivated so that they carry you through periods of resistance. Remember that resistance is temporary and will pass if you don't feed it with avoidance. Every time you push through resistance and engage in disciplined action anyway, you weaken the resistance pattern and strengthen the discipline pattern. Over time, resistance becomes less frequent and less intense as your brain learns that disciplined action leads to positive outcomes. Chapter 10. Automation and Mastery. Making discipline as natural as breathing. The ultimate goal of training your brain to like discipline isn't just to make challenging activities easier. It's to make them so automatic and natural that they require virtually no conscious effort or decision-making. This level of mastery transforms discipline from something you do into something you are. True automation happens when disciplined behaviors become so deeply ingrained in your neural pathways that they occur without conscious intention or willpower. You don't have to decide to exercise any more than you have to decide to brush your teeth. You don't have to force yourself to eat healthy food any more than you have to force yourself to breathe. The behaviors become as natural and automatic as any other biological function. But reaching this level requires understanding the specific mechanisms that create behavioral automation and systematically applying them over extended periods. Most people give up long before they reach true automation because they're still relying on conscious effort and willpower rather than building genuine unconscious competence. The first requirement for automation is what neuroscientists call overarning. Do practicing a behavior far beyond the point where it feels comfortable and familiar. Most people stop practicing once a behavior becomes easy. But automation requires continuing to practice until the behavior becomes completely effortless and unconscious. This means continuing to reinforce positive associations with disciplined behaviors even after they start feeling natural. It means maintaining conscious appreciation for the benefits even after they become obvious. It means protecting the environmental cues and reward systems that support these behaviors even after they feel automatic. The second requirement is what I call context independence. The ability to maintain disciplined behaviors regardless of external circumstances. True automation means the behaviors persist whether you're tired or energetic, stressed or relaxed, at home or traveling, busy or free. The behaviors become so deeply embedded that they adapt to any situation. Building context independence requires deliberately practicing disciplined behaviors in various circumstances and emotional states. Don't just exercise when you feel motivated. Exercise when you're tired, stressed, or busy. Don't just eat healthy when it's convenient. Maintain healthy choices when you're traveling or in social situations. This variability training makes the behaviors truly robust and automatic. The third requirement is identity integration. The disciplined behaviors must become so aligned with your sense of self that acting differently would feel strange and unnatural. This goes beyond just thinking of yourself as disciplined. The behaviors must become expressions of your core identity rather than things you do despite your natural inclinations. When discipline becomes identity integrated, breaking disciplined patterns feels as uncomfortable as acting against any other aspect of your personality. Someone who has truly integrated exercise into their identity feels restless and off balance when they miss workouts, not because they think they should exercise, but because exercise has become a fundamental part of who they are. This integration happens through consistent reinforcement of the connection between disciplined actions and personal values. Every time you engage in disciplined behavior, consciously recognize how that behavior expresses your values and character. Over time, the behavior becomes inseparable from your sense of self. The fourth requirement is unconscious competence. The ability to execute disciplined behaviors with excellence while directing conscious attention elsewhere. This is the difference between someone who has to think carefully about every aspect of their workout and someone who can exercise while their mind is free to wander or focus on other things. Unconscious competence develops through deliberate practice of the specific skills involved in your disciplined behaviors. For exercise, this might mean mastering proper form until it becomes automatic. For healthy eating, this might mean developing intuitive knowledge of nutrition and meal preparation. For focused work, this might mean building such strong concentration skills that deep focus becomes effortless. The most advanced level of automation is what I call adaptive mastery. ATM, the ability to maintain disciplined behaviors while continuously evolving and improving them based on changing circumstances and goals. This means the automation includes built-in mechanisms for growth and adaptation rather than just rigid repetition of the same actions. Adaptive mastery requires developing meta skills around discipline itself. The ability to recognize when behaviors need adjustment, the sensitivity to detect early signs of stagnation or regression, and the creativity to evolve your approach while maintaining the underlying patterns of discipline. People with adaptive mastery don't just maintain the same disciplined routines forever. They continuously refine and upgrade their approaches based on new information, changing life circumstances and evolving goals. But these adjustments happen within a framework of unwavering commitment to growth and excellence. To accelerate your movement toward automation, regularly assess which disciplined behaviors still require conscious effort and which have become truly automatic. Focus your conscious development energy on the behaviors that still feel effortful while protecting and maintaining the behaviors that have become natural. You can also use what I call automation testing to gauge your progress. Deliberately place yourself in challenging circumstances when you're tired, stressed, or busy and observe how naturally your disciplined behaviors occur. True automation means these behaviors persist even under difficult conditions. Remember that reaching true automation takes time, often months or years for complex behaviors. But the investment is worthwhile because automated discipline becomes a permanent asset that continues paying dividends for the rest of your life. Once discipline becomes as natural as breathing, you have unlimited capacity for growth and achievement without the constant drain of willpower and conscious effort. The journey from forced discipline to automatic discipline is one of the most powerful transformations a human being can undergo. It's the difference between constantly fighting yourself and having your own psychology work in service of your highest goals. When you achieve this level of mastery, discipline stops being something you do and becomes something you are. Chapter 11. Troubleshooting discipline breakdowns. When systems fail and how to recover fast. Even with the most sophisticated conditioning techniques and environmental design, your disciplined systems will occasionally break down. This isn't a personal failure or a sign that the methods don't work. It's an inevitable part of the growth process that every high performer learns to navigate skillfully. The key to handling discipline breakdowns is recognizing them early and responding with systematic recovery strategies rather than panic or self-judgment. Most people make breakdowns worse by adding shame and self-criticism to the mix, which creates additional psychological resistance that makes recovery even more difficult. Discipline breakdowns typically follow predictable patterns and occur for specific reasons. Understanding these patterns allows you to anticipate problems before they become serious and implement targeted solutions that address the root cause rather than just the symptoms. The first type of breakdown is the motivation crash, which happens when the initial excitement of new goals wears off and the reality of sustained effort sets in. This usually occurs between 2 and 8 weeks after starting new disciplined behaviors. Right when the novelty has faded, but the habits haven't become fully automatic yet. During motivation crashes, disciplined behaviors suddenly feel much more difficult than they did initially. The same workout that felt energizing 3 weeks ago now feels like torture. The healthy meal preparation that seemed manageable suddenly feels overwhelming. The focused work sessions that used to flow naturally now require enormous effort. The solution isn't to rely more heavily on motivation or to push harder through willpower. Instead, you need to temporarily reduce the intensity of your disciplined behaviors while maintaining the consistency. This is where your minimum viable disciplines become crucial. They allow you to maintain momentum even when motivation is low. During a motivation crash, return to the smallest possible version of your disciplined behaviors. If your workout routine has become overwhelming, just commit to putting on your gym clothes each day. If your healthy eating plan feels too restrictive, just commit to drinking more water and eating one piece of fruit daily. If your work projects feel impossible, just commit to opening the relevant documents and reading one paragraph. The goal during this phase isn't to maintain peak performance. It's to maintain the neural pathways and identity associations that support your disciplined behaviors. By staying consistent with minimal versions of these behaviors, you prevent the complete collapse of your conditioning while your motivation naturally recovers. The second type of breakdown is the complexity overload, which happens when your discipline systems become too complicated to maintain consistently. This often occurs when people try to optimize too many variables at once or when they add too many new behaviors simultaneously without properly integrating them first. Complexity overload manifests as decision fatigue, confusion about priorities, and a general sense that your disciplined behaviors require too much mental energy to sustain. You find yourself spending more time thinking about your systems than actually implementing them. The solution is radical simplification. Temporarily eliminate all but the most essential disciplined behaviors and focus exclusively on those core actions until they become truly automatic. Once these foundational behaviors are solid, you can gradually add complexity back into your systems. Most people resist simplification because they fear losing progress. But the opposite is true. Simplifying your approach allows you to build stronger foundations that can support much more sophisticated behaviors later. It's better to master 3 disciplined behaviors completely than to struggle with 10 behaviors inconsistently. The third type of breakdown is the environmental disruption, which happens when significant changes in your circumstances undermine the cues and contexts that support your disciplined behaviors. This might occur during travel, job changes, relationship transitions, or any major life shift that alters your normal routines and environments. Environmental disruptions are particularly challenging because they remove the external supports that make discipline feel automatic. Suddenly you have to rely much more heavily on internal motivation and conscious decision-making, which can be exhausting and unreliable. The key to handling environmental disruptions is developing portable discipline systems that can adapt to different circumstances. This means identifying the essential elements of your disciplined behaviors that can be maintained regardless of your environment and creating flexible versions of your routines that work in various situations. For example, if your regular exercise routine depends on a specific gym, develop a body weight workout routine that you can do anywhere. If your healthy eating plan depends on specific grocery stores and meal prep routines, identify healthy options that are available in most environments and develop simple meal strategies that don't require extensive preparation. The fourth type of breakdown is the identity conflict, which happens when your disciplined behaviors feel disconnected from your authentic self or when they conflict with other aspects of your identity. This often occurs when people adopt disciplined behaviors because they think they should rather than because those behaviors genuinely align with their values and goals. Identity conflicts create internal resistance that makes disciplined behaviors feel forced and unnatural. You might successfully maintain these behaviors for weeks or months through willpower, but eventually the internal contradiction becomes too exhausting to sustain. The solution requires honest examination of whether your disciplined behaviors truly serve your authentic goals and values or whether you've adopted them based on external expectations or social pressure. If the behaviors don't align with your genuine priorities, you need to either modify them to create better alignment or replace them with behaviors that feel more authentic. This doesn't mean abandoning challenge or choosing only easy options. It means ensuring that your disciplined behaviors serve purposes that matter deeply to you personally, not just purposes that look good to others or that you think you should care about. The most effective recovery strategy for any type of breakdown is what I call the reset protocol. This is a systematic process for quickly returning to disciplined behaviors after any interruption, regardless of how long the breakdown lasted or what caused it. The reset protocol has 3 phases. Acknowledgement. recommitment, and reconstruction. In the acknowledgement phase, you honestly assess what happened without judgment or self-criticism. You identify the specific factors that contributed to the breakdown and the lessons you can learn from the experience. In the recommitment phase, you consciously choose to resume your disciplined behaviors based on your values and long-term goals rather than momentary feelings. You remind yourself why these behaviors matter to you and visualize the benefits of returning to consistency. In the reconstruction phase, you implement simplified versions of your disciplined behaviors while gradually rebuilding the systems and supports that make discipline feel automatic. You focus on consistency over intensity until momentum is re-established. The key to successful recovery is speed of implementation. The longer you wait to restart disciplined behaviors after a breakdown, the more psychological resistance builds up and the more difficult it becomes to resume. It's better to restart immediately with minimal behaviors than to wait until you feel completely motivated to resume full intensity. Remember that breakdowns are opportunities for learning and system improvement, not evidence of personal failure. Each breakdown teaches you something valuable about your psychology, your environment, or your approach that can make your disciplined systems more robust and sustainable. The most successful people aren't those who never experience breakdowns. They're those who have developed sophisticated recovery systems that allow them to return to disciplined behaviors quickly and effectively whenever disruptions occur. Chapter 12. Scaling discipline across multiple life areas. Building comprehensive excellence. Once you've mastered the art of making discipline feel natural in one area of your life, the next challenge is scaling that same mastery across multiple domains simultaneously. This requires understanding how different types of disciplined behaviors interact with each other and how to manage your psychological resources effectively across competing priorities. Most people make the mistake of trying to implement disciplined behaviors in multiple areas simultaneously from the beginning. They decide to transform their fitness, diet, work habits, relationships, and finances all at once. Then wonder why they feel overwhelmed and can't sustain any of the changes consistently. The problem isn't lack of commitment or willpower. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of how psychological resources work. Your brain has limited capacity for conscious self-regulation, and trying to change too many behaviors simultaneously overloads this system and guarantees failure. The solution is sequential mastery followed by strategic integration. You focus intensively on building discipline in one area until it becomes truly automatic, then gradually expand to other areas while maintaining the foundational disciplines you've already established. This sequential approach allows you to build what psychologists call regulatory strength. Your overall capacity for self-control and disciplined behavior. Each area where you develop genuine discipline increases your total capacity for managing other challenging behaviors. But this only works if you allow sufficient time for each behavior to become automatic before adding new challenges. The key to choosing which area to focus on first is identifying your keystone discipline. The area where improved discipline will have the greatest positive impact on other areas of your life. For many people, this is physical health because improved fitness and nutrition directly enhance energy, mood, and cognitive function, which makes discipline easier in all other areas. For others, the keystone discipline might be sleep optimization because quality rest is foundational to everything else. For some, it might be time management or focused work habits because professional success provides resources and confidence that support improvement in other areas. Choose the area where you have both strong motivation and reasonable confidence in your ability to see meaningful progress within a few months. You want your first disciplined area to become a source of pride and momentum rather than frustration and self-doubt. Once your keystone discipline has become truly automatic, typically requiring 3 to 6 months of consistent practice, you can begin expanding to a second area. But this expansion requires careful integration rather than simply adding new behaviors on top of existing ones. The most effective integration strategy is finding natural connection points between your established discipline and your new target area. If you've mastered morning exercise, You might integrate nutritional discipline by focusing specifically on post-workout nutrition. If you've established focused work habits, you might integrate learning disciplines by dedicating specific work sessions to skill development. These connection points create synergistic relationships where each disciplined behavior supports and reinforces the others rather than competing for psychological resources. Your established discipline becomes the foundation and launching point for new areas of growth. Another crucial element of successful scaling is resource allocation. Understanding how different types of disciplined behaviors draw on different psychological resources and arranging your schedule to minimize conflicts between demanding activities. Activities that require high levels of cognitive control, creative thinking, or complex decision-making should be scheduled during your peak energy hours and separated from each other by recovery periods. Activities that have become more automatic can be scheduled during lower energy periods or combined with other activities. For example, if focused work requires your peak mental energy, schedule it during your most alert hours and avoid scheduling other cognitively demanding activities immediately before or after. If exercise has become automatic, it can be scheduled during lower energy periods and might actually boost your energy for other activities. Advanced practitioners learn to design what I call discipline ecosystems. Integrated systems where multiple disciplined behaviors support and enhance each other in mutually reinforcing cycles in a well-designed ecosystem. Each element makes the others easier and more rewarding rather than creating additional burden. A simple discipline ecosystem might include morning exercise that boosts energy for focused work. Focused work that provides a sense of accomplishment that supports healthy eating choices and healthy eating that improves sleep quality that makes morning exercise feel easier. Each element feeds into and strengthens the others. The most sophisticated discipline ecosystems include built-in feedback loops that help you monitor and adjust the system based on results and changing circumstances. You develop sensitivity to early warning signs that one area is beginning to slip. And you have predetermined responses that protect the overall system. You also build in regular review and optimization periods where you assess how well your different disciplined areas are supporting each other and make adjustments to improve the synergistic effects. This might involve changing the timing of certain activities, modifying specific behaviors to create better integration, or temporarily reducing focus on one area to strengthen another. One of the biggest challenges in scaling discipline is managing the tendency to perfectionism that often develops as you become more successful with disciplined behaviors. As you experience the benefits of discipline in one area, it's natural to want to optimize everything simultaneously and to hold yourself to increasingly high standards across all domains. But perfectionism across multiple areas is unsustainable and often counterproductive. It creates psychological pressure that can actually undermine the natural motivation and enjoyment that make discipline feel effortless. Instead of trying to optimize everything simultaneously, maintain a hierarchy of priorities that allows you to excel in your most important areas while accepting good enough performance in less critical domains. This doesn't mean abandoning your standards or accepting mediocrity. It means being strategic about where you invest your highest levels of attention and energy, and recognizing that sustainable excellence requires cycles of focus and recovery rather than constant peak performance in all areas. The ultimate goal of scaling discipline is developing what I call integrated mastery. A state where disciplined behaviors across multiple life domains feel natural, automatic, and mutually supportive. When you achieve integrated mastery, discipline stops feeling like a collection of separate behaviors and becomes a unified way of being that expresses your deepest values and highest aspirations. People with integrated mastery don't think about discipline as something they do. They experience it as something they are. Their disciplined behaviors feel as natural and effortless as breathing. And the different areas of their life work together in harmonious support of their overall growth and contribution. This level of integration takes years to develop fully. But the journey itself is incredibly rewarding. Each step toward greater integration makes your entire life feel more aligned, purposeful, and sustainable. You stop feeling fragmented across different roles and responsibilities and start experiencing a deeper coherence in how you show up in the world. Chapter 13. Advanced Psychology of Long-Term Consistency. Sustaining excellence for decades. Long-term consistency in discipline requires understanding psychological patterns that operate over months, years, and decades rather than just days and weeks. The strategies that work for establishing new habits are different from the strategies needed to maintain those habits through major life transitions, changing circumstances, and evolving personal priorities. Most people think that once a behavior becomes automatic, it will continue indefinitely without conscious attention. But this isn't how psychology actually works. Even deeply ingrained habits can decay over time if they're not actively maintained and periodically renewed through conscious practice and recommitment. The first challenge of long-term consistency is what psychologists call habituation. Who is the natural tendency for any repeated experience to become less rewarding over time? Activities that initially felt exciting and motivating gradually become routine and may even start to feel boring or burdensome. This happens because your brain's reward system is designed to pay attention to novelty and change rather than consistency and predictability. The same workout that gave you an incredible endorphin rush when you started exercising might barely register as pleasant after you've been doing it consistently for 2 years. The solution isn't to constantly chase new activities or abandon behaviors once they become routine. Instead, you need to develop strategies for finding novelty and growth within established disciplined behaviors. This might involve progressively increasing difficulty, exploring new variations, or finding deeper levels of mastery within the same basic activity. For physical disciplines, this could mean continuously challenging yourself with new fitness goals, learning new skills within your preferred activities, or exploring how to optimize performance through technique refinement. For mental disciplines, it might mean gradually increasing the complexity of challenges, applying your skills to new domains, or developing teaching or mentoring capabilities that deepen your own understanding. The key is maintaining what researchers call optimal challenge, keeping your disciplined behaviors at the edge of your current capabilities so they continue to provide opportunities for growth and learning. When activities become too easy or too routine, they lose their capacity to engage your attention and provide intrinsic satisfaction. The second challenge of long-term consistency is navigating major life transitions that disrupt the contexts and identities that support your disciplined behaviors. Career changes, relationship changes, geographic moves, health challenges, and family transitions all have the potential to undermine disciplines that previously felt solid and automatic. These transitions are particularly challenging because they often require rebuilding the environmental cues, social supports, and daily routines that make disciplined behaviors feel effortless. You might have to completely reconstruct your discipline systems to fit new circumstances while maintaining continuity with your core values and long-term goals. The most effective approach to managing transitions is developing what I call portable core disciplines, essential behaviors that can be adapted to almost any circumstance while maintaining their fundamental character and benefits. These might include basic physical movement that can be done anywhere, core mental practices like meditation or journaling that don't depend on specific environments, or fundamental nutritional principles that can be applied regardless of available food options. By identifying and strengthening these portable disciplines, you create a foundation of consistency that can survive almost any external change. Even when major transitions disrupt your more elaborate discipline systems, you can maintain momentum through these core practices while rebuilding more complex routines in your new circumstances. The third challenge is what I call discipline drift. The subtle gradual erosion of standards and consistency that happens so slowly that it's often unnoticed until significant regression has occurred. This might manifest as workout sessions that gradually become shorter and less intense, healthy eating that slowly incorporates more processed foods, or focused work periods that imperceptibly fill with more distractions. Discipline drift is insidious because each individual change feels insignificant and reasonable. Skipping one workout due to a busy schedule seems perfectly justifiable. Having fast food once because you didn't have time to meal prep isn't a big deal. Checking your phone just once during a focused work session won't hurt anything, but these small compromises compound over time and can eventually undermine years of disciplined development. The solution is implementing what I call consistency monitoring systems. Place regular check-ins with yourself where you honestly assess whether your disciplined behaviors are maintaining their original standards and effectiveness. This might involve weekly reviews of your behavior patterns, monthly assessments of your progress toward long-term goals, or quarterly deep evaluations of whether your disciplined systems are still serving your evolving priorities. These monitoring systems need to include both quantitative metrics, tracking specific behaviors, outcomes, and measurements, and qualitative assessments of how your disciplined behaviors feel and what they're contributing to your overall life satisfaction and growth. The fourth challenge is avoiding what researchers call the arrival fallacy, IMF. The mistaken belief that once you reach a certain level of disciplined behavior or achieve specific goals, you can relax your efforts and coast on your previous achievements. This often happens when people reach major milestones like achieving their target weight, completing a challenging project, or establishing financial security. The problem with the arrival mentality is that discipline is not a destination but a dynamic process that requires ongoing attention and energy. The moment you stop actively cultivating disciplined behaviors, entropy begins working against you. Skills atrophy, habits weaken, and the psychological conditioning that makes discipline feel effortless gradually fades. Instead of thinking about discipline as something you achieve, think about it as something you practice, like physical fitness or musical ability. Disciplined behavior is a capacity that must be continuously maintained and developed, or it will naturally decline over time. This doesn't mean you can never relax your efforts or that you have to maintain peak intensity in all areas indefinitely. It means developing sustainable approaches to discipline that can be maintained over decades rather than just months, and recognizing that periodic renewal and recommitment are natural and necessary parts of the long-term journey. The most advanced strategy for long-term consistency is developing what I call evolutionary discipline. The ability to consciously evolve your disciplined behaviors as your life circumstances, priorities, and capabilities change while maintaining continuity with your core values and long-term vision. Evolutionary discipline recognizes that the specific behaviors that serve you well in one phase of life may not be optimal for another phase, but the underlying commitment to growth, excellence, and self-mastery remains constant. You develop the ability to thoughtfully adapt your discipline systems while preserving the psychological patterns and identity structures that support sustained high performance. This might mean transitioning from intense individual athletic training to family-oriented physical activities as your life circumstances change. It might mean evolving from aggressive career advancement to mentorship and contribution as your professional priorities mature. It might mean shifting from acquisition-focused disciplines to legacy-focused disciplines as your values and time horizons extend. The key is making these transitions consciously and intentionally rather than allowing them to happen through drift or default. You actively choose how to evolve your disciplined behaviors based on your changing understanding of what matters most to you and what will serve your highest potential in each phase of life. People who master evolutionary discipline maintain remarkable consistency in their commitment to growth and excellence. While continuously adapting the specific expressions of that commitment to serve their evolving circumstances and aspirations, they avoid both the rigidity that leads to broken systems and the drift that leads to diminished standards. Chapter 14. The Compound Effect of Disciplined Thinking. How mental discipline transforms everything. While most people focus on disciplining their actions and behaviors, the most profound transformations come from disciplining your thinking patterns. Mental discipline, the ability to consciously direct your attention, choose your thoughts, and maintain focus despite distractions, is the master skill that enhances every other area of your life. Your thoughts directly influence your emotions, which drive your decisions, which create your results. When you develop genuine discipline over your thinking patterns, you gain influence over every aspect of your experience and every outcome you create. This is why mental discipline is often called the discipline that makes all other disciplines easier. Most people have very little conscious control over their thinking. They allow their minds to wander randomly from topic to topic, react automatically to whatever thoughts arise, and accept whatever emotional states result from their undisciplined mental habits. They're essentially passengers in their own minds rather than drivers of their own experience. But your mind is far more controllable than most people realize. With proper training, you can learn to direct your attention with precision. Choose your thoughts consciously and maintain specific mental states that support your goals and values. This isn't about suppressing thoughts or forcing positive thinking. Carno. It's about developing genuine skill in mental navigation. The first level of mental discipline is attention control. The ability to focus your mind on what you choose for as long as you choose without being distracted by irrelevant thoughts, emotions, or environmental stimuli. This is the foundation skill that makes every other form of discipline easier because it allows you to stay present and engaged with challenging activities rather than being pulled away by mental resistance. Most people have incredibly weak attention control. They can't focus on a single task for more than a few minutes before their mind starts wandering to something else. They get distracted by every notification, every stray thought, every slight discomfort or boredom. This weak attention makes every challenging activity feel more difficult because they're fighting both the inherent challenge of the activity and the additional challenge of keeping their mind engaged. But attention control can be trained systematically through practices like meditation, focused reading, single tasking, and deliberate concentration exercises. The key is gradually increasing the duration and intensity of your focused attention while learning to notice and redirect mental wandering without judgment or frustration. Start with brief periods of focused attention. Perhaps 5 to 10 minutes of completely focused reading or meditation, and gradually extend these periods as your concentration capacity increases. The goal isn't to eliminate all mental wandering, but to develop the ability to notice when your mind has drifted and consciously return your attention to your chosen focus. The second level of mental discipline is thought selection. The ability to consciously choose which thoughts to engage with and develop versus which thoughts to acknowledge and release. Most people engage with every thought that arises in their mind as if they have no choice. But you can learn to be much more selective about which thoughts deserve your attention and energy. This doesn't mean trying to control which thoughts initially arise. That's neither possible nor necessary. It means developing the ability to observe thoughts as they arise and consciously choose whether to engage with them further or let them pass without getting drawn into mental elaboration. Thoughts that support your goals, values, and well-being deserve engagement and development. Thoughts that create unnecessary worry, self-doubt, or distraction can be acknowledged and released without being pursued. This selective engagement gradually shifts the overall pattern of your thinking toward more constructive and empowering directions. The third level of mental discipline is emotional regulation. The ability to maintain appropriate emotional states despite challenging circumstances or difficult thoughts and feelings. This isn't about suppressing emotions or pretending to feel differently than you do. It's about developing the capacity to experience emotions fully while maintaining your ability to think clearly and make good decisions. Most people are completely controlled by their emotional states. When they feel anxious, they think anxious thoughts and make anxiety-driven decisions. When they feel angry, they think angry thoughts and take actions they later regret. When they feel unmotivated, they abandon their commitments and drift toward immediate gratification. But emotions, while important and valuable, don't have to control your thinking or decision-making. You can learn to experience strong emotions while maintaining access to your rational thinking and long-term values. This emotional regulation is what allows disciplined people to do what needs to be done regardless of how they feel in the moment. The fourth level of mental discipline is perspective control. The ability to consciously choose how you interpret events, circumstances, and challenges. Most people react to situations based on automatic interpretations that may not be accurate or helpful. But you can train yourself to actively choose more empowering and accurate perspectives. This involves developing what psychologists call cognitive flexibility. CU the ability to consider multiple interpretations of the same situation and choose the perspective that best serves your goals and well-being instead of automatically assuming the worst when facing challenges. You can consciously look for opportunities, lessons or growth possibilities within difficult circumstances. The most advanced level of mental discipline is what I call consciousness direction. The ability to deliberately choose what aspects of reality to focus on and how to interpret your overall experience. This goes beyond just managing thoughts and emotions to actively shaping your fundamental experience of being alive. People with advanced mental discipline don't just react to their circumstances. They consciously choose how to experience those circumstances. They can find meaning and purpose in difficulty, maintain optimism during challenging periods, and stay connected to their values and long-term vision even when facing significant obstacles. This level of mental discipline creates what researchers call psychological resilience, NBA, the ability to maintain mental health, emotional stability, and effective functioning despite stress, adversity, or major life challenges. But it goes beyond just surviving difficulties to actively using challenges as opportunities for growth and development. The compound effect of mental discipline becomes apparent over months and years of practice. As your ability to control your attention, select your thoughts, regulate your emotions, and choose your perspectives improves. Every area of your life begins to improve as well. Physical discipline becomes easier because you can maintain focus during workouts and resist the mental chatter that creates perceived suffering. Work discipline becomes easier because you can maintain concentration for extended periods and choose productive thoughts even when facing boring or difficult tasks. Relationship discipline becomes easier because you can regulate your emotional reactions and choose responses that align with your values rather than your immediate impulses. The most successful people in every field have developed sophisticated mental discipline that allows them to maintain peak performance mindsets regardless of external circumstances. They've learned to create internal experiences that support excellence rather than being victims of whatever thoughts and emotions happen to arise. This mental mastery isn't a mystical or supernatural ability. It's a set of learnable skills that can be developed through consistent practice and proper instruction. Every moment of your waking life provides opportunities to practice mental discipline by consciously directing your attention, choosing your thoughts, and maintaining emotional regulation. When you commit to developing genuine mental discipline, you're not just improving your ability to think, you're gaining influence over your entire experience of being alive. This is the ultimate expression of discipline because it gives you agency over the one thing that's truly yours, your consciousness. Chapter 15. Integration and Mastery. Becoming someone who effortlessly chooses excellence. The ultimate goal of learning to trick your brain into liking discipline isn't just to make challenging activities easier. It's to fundamentally transform who you are at the deepest level. True mastery occurs when discipline becomes so integrated into your identity and psychology that choosing excellence feels as natural and automatic as breathing. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. And it doesn't happen through willpower or forced behavior change. It happens through the patient, consistent application of the principles and techniques you've learned, sustained over months and years until new neural pathways become stronger than old patterns and new identity structures replace limiting self-concepts. When you achieve true integration, discipline stops being something you do and becomes something you are. You don't have to decide whether to make healthy choices or work toward your goals. These behaviors emerge naturally from who you've become. You don't struggle with motivation or willpower because your desires and values are aligned with actions that support your highest potential. This integrated mastery manifests in several distinct ways that separate people who have truly transformed their relationship with discipline from those who are still relying on techniques and systems to force themselves toward better choices. The first sign of integration is effortless consistency. Your disciplined behaviors happen automatically without internal resistance or conscious decision-making. You exercise, eat well, work productively, and maintain healthy relationships, not because you force yourself to, but because these behaviors feel natural and right for the person you've become. This effortless consistency extends across different areas of your life and remains stable even during challenging periods, major transitions, or high-stress situations. While people who rely on willpower and external systems often see their discipline collapse during difficult times, integrated discipline actually becomes stronger under pressure because it's rooted in identity rather than circumstance. The second sign of integration is authentic enjoyment of challenging activities. You genuinely look forward to your workouts, feel energized by difficult projects, and find satisfaction in pushing through resistance. This isn't fake positivity or forced enthusiasm. It's a genuine rewiring of your reward system that makes growth and excellence intrinsically rewarding. This authentic enjoyment creates a positive feedback loop that makes discipline increasingly easy and sustainable over time. Instead of depleting your energy and willpower, disciplined activities actually energize you and provide intrinsic motivation for continued growth and improvement. The third sign of integration is automatic course correction. When you do get off track, which happens to everyone occasionally, you naturally return to disciplined behaviors without dramatic internal struggle or elaborate systems for getting back on track. The return to excellence feels as automatic as the original drift away from it. This automatic course correction happens because your identity and neural pathways are so strongly oriented toward growth and excellence that deviation from these patterns creates internal discomfort that motivates natural realignment. You don't need external accountability or complex recovery protocols because your own psychology provides consistent feedback toward disciplined choices. The fourth sign of integration is expansion beyond personal benefit. Your discipline begins to serve not just your individual goals and development but the growth and well-being of others. You naturally become someone who models excellence, mentors others in their development, and contributes to causes larger than your personal advancement. This expansion happens because genuine discipline develops character and perspective that naturally extends towards service and contribution. When you've mastered the art of personal excellence, you naturally want to share that mastery and help others discover their own potential for growth and achievement. The journey toward integration requires understanding that mastery is not a destination but a continuous process of refinement and development. Even people who have achieved remarkable levels of integrated discipline continue to grow, learn, and evolve their understanding and application of these principles throughout their lives. This continuous growth mindset prevents stagnation and keeps you engaged with the process of development rather than becoming complacent about past achievements. You maintain what researchers call beginner's mind, an attitude of curiosity, humility, and openness to learning that keeps you growing even at advanced levels of mastery. The most advanced practitioners develop what I call conscious evolution. Evolution, the ability to deliberately direct their own continued development based on changing circumstances, expanding awareness, and deepening understanding of their potential and purpose. They don't just maintain existing levels of discipline. They consciously evolve toward ever greater expressions of excellence and contribution. This conscious evolution requires developing meta skills around growth itself. The ability to assess your current development accurately. Identify the next edges of growth. Design experiences that will facilitate that growth and maintain motivation for continued development even when external rewards are no longer necessary. People who achieve this level of mastery often report that discipline becomes a form of creative self-expression rather than self-improvement. They're no longer working on themselves in order to achieve external goals. They're expressing their deepest nature through disciplined action that serves both their own development and the betterment of the world around them. The practical path toward integration involves several key commitments that must be maintained consistently over extended periods. First, you must commit to treating discipline as a practice rather than a project, something you engage with daily as an expression of your values rather than something you do temporarily to achieve specific outcomes. Second, you must commit to conscious attention throughout the integration process. The techniques and principles in this material only work if you apply them consciously and consistently. Integration happens through sustained awareness and deliberate practice, not through passive hoping or occasional effort. Third, you must commit to patience with the process. True integration takes time, typically years rather than months for complete transformation. The people who achieve lasting mastery are those who can maintain consistent effort over long periods without needing immediate rewards or dramatic results. Fourth, you must commit to authentic self-honesty about your progress, challenges, and areas for continued development. Integration requires accurately assessing where you are in the process and addressing obstacles and limitations as they arise rather than pretending they don't exist or hoping they'll resolve themselves. Finally, you must commit to sharing your growth with others in whatever way feels authentic and appropriate for your circumstances. True mastery is not a private achievement but a contribution to the collective human potential for excellence and growth. When you make these commitments and sustain them over time, you join the ranks of people who have discovered that discipline is not about forcing yourself to do things you don't want to do. It's about becoming someone who naturally wants to do things that create excellence, growth, and contribution. This is the ultimate transformation. Not just achieving your goals, but becoming the kind of person who naturally and effortlessly chooses actions that serve your highest potential and the greatest good. The journey never ends, but the struggle does. When discipline becomes integrated into your identity and psychology, excellence stops being something you pursue and becomes something you naturally express. This is the true art of tricking your brain into liking discipline. Not through manipulation or force, but through genuine transformation that aligns your desires with your highest possibilities.